Let me just start off. I've had the honor to have a grandfather who raised 13 children in Texas, a successful farmer, and every one of these kids grew up on that farm, learned work ethic, and became very successful. My dad is an agronomist, got his PhD at Ohio State, taught, was a professor in this arena of agronomy, agriculture, and had a farm the last 35 years of his life. I was raised around the farm. I actually thought about at one point going into that industry because I have so much respect for it. Uh, I think a couple of things that concerns me. First of all, and I'm going to start off by this one statement was made earlier that just have parental training for those in this industry, and that it just sends chills to my bones to think of any bureaucrat think that our farming industry, which is really the culture of our nation, that's where hard work is done, good name is done, figuring out how to be innovative is done. It's all done by the small business owners, and we're talking about 98% of these farmers are small business owners. So I wanted, first of all, that is something we should not even think about considering. There's also a false notion that bureaucrats in DC care more about their kids, their youth, and the community than these folks actually parents and those that are actually running this process. So I would say this: we need to make sure that we are not demeaning this industry. There's going to be bad actors. But the bad actors are not these small. As a matter of fact, I would suggest coming to Utah, seeing what 5 generations of farmers and herders and beef and sheep herders look like and what they do. And you'll see a community that's all about pride in what they are, making sure they're mentoring their kids as they move forward and giving back to this our country, because less than 1% of our farming industry, actually representing 1% of our farming industry, supports the rest of our nation. So I do want to ask a couple good questions here. Ms. Boswell, HR 7345 raised the age of workers to perform agricultural tasks deemed hazardous by the Secretary of Labor from 16 to 18. What impact will that change have on our younger workers hoping to gain valuable skills in the agricultural industry?
Thank you for the question. And in answering it, I think we need to remember that farms are in farming communities. I grew up in a town of 300 people. I had 17 people in my high school class. Main Street is the bank. There's a small grocery store that most around DC would call a bodega, and 2 well drilling companies and a pivot company. If my nephews who live in that same small town can't work on farms at the age of 16, which was their sophomore year in high school, there's no other opportunities at all. They're driving. They can drive to and from their consolidated school about 20 miles away, on roads going 70 miles an hour, and changing and restricting the ability to start that work, as HR 7345 does, would limit their ability to get any job at all, either because the tasks that they would be doing would be so restrictive, even though their maturity level and they've been around agriculture their entire life, it would base that opportunity only on their age and not factoring in any of those other considerations that a parent and supervisor or ag educator could also weigh in to determine what is safely available to them and what they're ready for.
Thank you so much for that. HR 7345 grants the Secretary of Labor new authority to prohibit young people from certain agricultural work if the Secretary finds it detrimental to their health or well-being. Do you have concerns about Congress granting the Secretary this such an authority? Could this open the door for administrative overreach, as we saw with the 2011 Obama DOL proposed rule?
I have concerns about bureaucrats in Washington writing overly broad regulations without technical expertise on farming practices and without engaging farmers. And that's exactly what we saw in 2011. I do believe that there is a room for a thoughtful conversation. Farmers and ranchers and ag employers that I know in my experience want to make sure everyone is safe. That's why we're engaged with the FFA and extension and safety experts and on boards and committees, and host farm progress shows. We want to be engaged and we want to have that discussion, but we worry that won't hold true and that broad sweeping proposals will come through again that will completely restrict the exemptions, but also not be in touch with actual farming practices and what someone around agriculture their entire life feels completely comfortable doing versus maybe someone who hasn't been around agriculture their entire life.
Time is up, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, your concerns are very well founded, and I appreciate your experience and your passion. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess.